Welcome back to Built by Educators, a collab ed podcast where we center on real conversations about teaching, leadership, and the day-to-day realities of working in schools. Today I'm joined by Dr. Desiree Cameron. She's been a classroom teacher, a theater educator, a curriculum coordinator, a teacher trainer at NYU, Pepperdine, and UCLA. And she's now a high school principal in California. In other words, she's seen this work from every angle there is. We're talking today about what it actually means to educate young adults. Not just teach them content, not just to get them to graduation, but really meet them where they are during one of the most complicated stretches of life any of us go through. High school sits right in the middle of childhood and adulthood. Students are navigating identity, pressure, independence, and uncertainty all at the same time. And educators who work with them every day have to hold a lot of that while also being teachers. Dr. Cameron has thought deeply about this. I'm glad she is here. Let us get into it. So I wanted to welcome you and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted.
Yes, it's always nice to meet somebody on the opposite coast and be able to strike up a conversation just like this.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about this podcast because I don't work in a high school. I've never worked in a high school. Funny fact, I actually went to school to work in a high school,
Oh,
but I ended up working with younger kids. I work with the older of the youngest kids, but as I was researching you, I learned a lot about you, and I learned one of the things that you talk a lot about is play. And the first thing that came to my mind was I thought when we talked about play, we talked about kindergarten and pre-K and elementary school. And so just curiously, for my knowledge, do you still push that as a high school director?
yes. I think it doesn't matter how old you are. I think we all crave and need play. And I think the older that you get and you go through the system, the less play happens in schools and with teachers. So in professional development, I encourage teachers to play and have fun and connect and try things out. It might feel silly, they're taking risks, but if I'm modeling the importance of playing, then they'll take that on and they'll bring that to their classrooms. And then the students are much more engaged and the students crave it. I see my high school students love it when they get to play. And I see my students love it at the undergraduate and graduate level too. They're surprised by it because they're just expecting a lecture or something that doesn't feel as engaging. But when you actually get to play, and what I mean by play is you either take on different roles or you step into someone else's shoes or you're building something with Legos again, but it's something more complex and it's related to architecture and you're connecting all the different interdisciplinary work. It makes that you're turning learning from reading about it or talking about it and you get to embody it. And so I think it's missing often in our schools, and I think it's an important piece to emphasize both in teacher training as well as with our students.
Yeah, what's interesting you mention is that the definition of play can change, and I think that that's really important. But as I heard you talk, I noticed a lot of parallels because I use play in elementary school for the same reason that you use it in high school. It's to
Yep.
engage the students, it's to get them into things, and it makes me wonder if play in a secondary level or in a middle school level can also have a direct impact on social emotional learning. Whereas if you're playing and you're acting out the responsible way to disagree, or I know that we talk a lot about that in terms of play for younger kids, but as I listen to you speak, I was just imagining how that works too. So it makes a lot of sense. The words have different definitions, and I think that that's a really great thing. So educating young adults versus teaching students. So you've worked with students at every level. How does your thinking shift when you are working with high school students specifically, knowing they are right in that space between childhood and adulthood?
So high school is a critical time. It's a very delicate time. People are going through puberty, at least the end phases of it. And there is this perception that when you're 18, you're a legal adult. I mean, not necessarily just perception, that's kind of what it is. And so the students think when they're 18, they're a fully formed adult and they get to do whatever they want because they can already drive when they're 16 and they can vote and they can enlist in the army and all these things. But we know with more research that our brains are not fully developed by the time we're 18. And there's even more recent research actually from the University of Cambridge that came out that showed that there are different phases of our brain development. And really only by the time we're 32 has our brain formed into adulthood. And so when you think about it in that way, it's this big learning curve as a high schooler that their job, they are so craving, they're craving to be older and to have freedom and to get out and do what they want to be doing. So sometimes they just see high school as a stepping stone to what's next. And I think our job as teachers and educators, leaders, administrators, families too, is to get them excited about where they are now in that very special moment where they get to develop and learn and get passionate and try things and make mistakes and learn from it and persevere. So it's a special time because it's a very challenging time for them. Their amygdalas are swollen and they get these emotional triggers and they can spiral pretty fast, pretty quickly, especially based on pressures from peer pressure or social media can take them into a really bad place very fast. So it's our job to remind them of the reality of the situation that they're in, which is they have an opportunity to discover who they are choosing to become. And they have an opportunity to lean into learning because they want to learn something and be passionate rather than see it as a checklist. I need to do these things in order to get to this college, or I need to do these things in order to get this job. I want them to really revel in those 4 years of connecting with one another, getting ignited by falling in love with learning, and building really important life skills. So
Yeah, and from what I hear you saying,
yeah.
yeah, no, I hear, and it makes so much sense. I mean, I didn't look. I'm not an academic, right? And so, I don't come into research often, but the fact that you shared with me that the age is 32, I mean, some simple math will tell you that it's almost double what we think it is, and I think that's really interesting. So what it sounds like to me in the high school years, and the teachers who teach in the high school years obviously spend a lot of time trying to motivate students.
Right.
And so we all know that motivation looks different at all ages, but I would assume at the age of secondary high school students, it looks very different. So I'm curious to know, and I'm curious for you to share, because you have a lot of practitioner experience too. So I would love for you to share with anybody who listens to this podcast, what you found that actually works when students seem disengaged or checked out.
So I think there has to be a lot of pre-work that we do in general, and this is regardless of the level. And what I mean by pre-work is we have to come prepared and be very clear about purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, and make sure that we connect our learning experiences to something beyond it's just a school project. It needs to be something more important, and it's got to be bigger, that ideally impacts the school community or the community outside of your school or a part of the world. It's got to be important and meaningful. And this is where I think motivation changes. Some students may act like they don't care, but if you do the pre-work and you get to know them and say, what do you really care about? What's important to you? They're going to tell you the things they care about. And it might not be anything initially to do with school. It might be a girlfriend, it might be a family member, it might be, a job that they're doing outside of school, it might be refurbishing cars. With every passion and interest that they share, you can find skills that are not just school skills, but life skills that they can develop to fuel their own passions and interests. So the more pre-work we do to really get to know our students and see what gets them excited and what they care about, the more we can connect the learning to what they care about and be really clear why we're teaching what we're teaching. And making sure that it matters. Because if it doesn't matter to us and it's just a box we're checking off, it's not going to matter to the students. So I think that purpose is important, the clarity is important, and connecting it to something bigger than I got to accomplish this for school.
Yeah, really, really challenging to do, right?
Yep.
And, I listen to what you're saying, and it just sounds like the key to success. It's funny because it sounds like the keys to success, just in education alone, is the relationship, right?
Yep.
The relationship you have with the student. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and this is just a guess. Again, I met you 17 minutes ago. I'm going to guess that you're the type of director who greets children in the morning. I'm going to guess that you're the type of person who, when a student walks past you, you kind of already have an idea of whether that student's on or off. And so I that also leads me to believe that students, and again, this is an assumption, and I tell my students not to do this, so if you guys are listening, I'm doing it. My assumption is that students will also find it easier to be honest with you. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you've developed ways in which to talk about relevance with students, but as a principal or as a director, how do you coach your staff to respond when students are openly questioning the relevance of what they're learning? So I am a science whiz. I'm a math whiz. And first period for me is European history. And the first thing I do when I walk into that class is say, well, I'm going to be a physicist, Mr. Williams. Why do I have to learn about Napoleon? How do you coach educators to handle that?
It's a great question. I think being curious and asking questions. So it's not to argue, it's not because I said so, right? Let's go with your example. Let's say someone wants to be a physicist, okay? And they are curious about Napoleon.
I'm sure you
I
get
would
kids
say,
all day saying, I want to be a
right,
physicist,
I mean,
right? Like,
I have all kinds of students.
no idea
So
why that was the first thing that came to my
I
mind, but
love
let's
that
go
that
with
was a
it.
first idea. Way to go, babe. Okay, so let's say this person is really wanting to do that. I would say, okay, well, what specifically do you want to do in physics? And let's say they say, well, I want to come up with the next new big thing in physics and discover something. Okay, well, in order to discover something, don't you need to know what's been discovered before? Yeah, okay. Well, how do we find that out? We probably need to do some research and learn all about all the physicists. Okay. And once we do that, once you've learned about all the physicists, does it matter about what time period they lived and what access they had? And how about in the future? Let's think about the timeline of that and why would the timeline be important? And if we don't study previous physicists, what mistakes could we be making that we could be avoiding? And how does that then connect to history in general, right? So I think it's finding ways to make those connections where students are being led almost through a Socratic discussion to get to why it's actually important, and for the students to then say, oh yeah, I get it, I see why this is important. The other way I would coach teachers is for the teachers to really, again, be upfront about this, and before they even start a lesson, for them to say, why do you think this even matters? Why do you think we're even talking about this? Why is this important? How is this relevant to you in your life today? And have the teachers engage in those conversations, and when the students hear their peers saying why it's important, they will all of a sudden go, oh, maybe that is important, maybe that is relevant. And it's not just the canned answers that people like to give, it's something that's real. So I coach my teachers in being curious, asking questions, not getting defensive, and also in being really prepared and doing that pre-work to share, why are we even doing this? Why does this matter? Why does this matter for you in your life in the big scheme of things?
How do you push students academically while still this is a good one because I think this is going to be real relatable. All right. So
Yeah.
we all know that students, no matter what, carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
More so now than I think ever before, and I see that on an elementary level. So I'm just assuming that on a secondary level, where I know that I had a job when I was working, I was dealing, as you said, with changes in my body. I was dealing with hormones that I didn't understand, sports, drama with friends, teenage drama. Now I'm 42 years old, and kids today have social media on top of that. They have all of this. So I guess my next question is, how do you push students academically, or how do you coach your staff to push students academically while still recognizing that many of them are carrying real weight outside of the school?
Yeah. So I think first, it's really important to remember that everyone is carrying a certain weight to varying degrees. And just for that to be a general assumption from teachers and staff that no matter who they interact with, students, parents, other colleagues, everybody is fighting a battle that you don't know about. Sometimes you'll know. Sometimes you'll know it's really bad, really heavy, something really awful going on in their lives. But sometimes you don't, and they might still be going through something really hard. So if you assume that everybody might be going through it, the way you interact with people changes a bit. I think you approach with more grace and kindness and more love. You can still encourage people, but if you come at it from a place of everybody in the room, from the littles to the bigs, the teachers and the staff too, deserve to be really cared for here when they're at this school. I think it makes your job a little bit easier when you just approach it with that stance. So you can still push people academically, but I do think you also need to know what's going on if people are willing to share. So if there's something really hard, they should feel safe enough to say, listen, I've got some stuff. They don't have to give you all their personal details. In fact, I wouldn't pry. But if there's some real stuff going on that's too hard, give them grace, give them extensions, give them support. It's not, you don't have to be hard about, well, this was due today, so you're getting a 0 if you turn it in tomorrow. Our goal is,
I'm laughing right now because I had the opportunity to adjunct, and it was one of the best things I ever did, and frankly was one of the reasons I started this platform. And I just remember hearing people say to me, oh, well, I take off 10 points for every day something's late, and I do this and I do that, and it just it sits with me in a way where you're almost doing the opposite of motivating when you do that, and I think that it becomes just this game of almost power in a way. And look, I understand I understand the intent behind it. I understand that you're trying to teach deadlines, and the facts are that if you miss a deadline with your superintendent or I miss a deadline, there are issues with that. Right? But there's also grace.
Correct. Yeah, I highly agree with you. And teaching at the college level too, I did this too. I think it's important if you focus on what the purpose of education is. And if it's about encouraging people to be excited to learn, then I want my students to learn. And if I shut them down by, oh, you didn't turn it in or you didn't do well enough. I mean, I have the same feeling about rubrics. I never have zeros or you can fail on a rubric because what's the point? I don't want that to even be an option on my rubric. You didn't do well enough? Guess what? You get to do it again. Can't wait for you to do it. And I'm going to support you. I did that all through all grades that I taught. I thought it was really important for students to know that I actually want them to do it because it's important and meaningful and it's for them and their growth. And if they just kind of phoned it in, what are they learning?
Okay.
So maybe instead of phoning it in, let's try it again. And maybe we try it again in a way that's more engaging for them. So yeah, I do think providing grace is really important and checking in and seeing what modifications are helpful, but all focusing back to the root purpose of education is to really support people to be excited about learning and to learn.
And you know what's funny is by default, so you take 10 points off for it being late. Your argument is that you're enforcing a deadline, and a deadline's about accountability.
Right.
However, if you look at a student and you say, I'm not accepting this, do it again, right? You're still holding the student accountable to
Correct.
something. And so there's that really interesting, like, what do I do? And I think that traditionally speaking, it was always, and you know, even as a college professor, sometimes I had people come up to me and say, you know, hey, this is going on, and it's like, all right, then just turn it in the next time. And they're like, wait, what? And it's like,
Yep.
like, well, normally deadlines are hard, and well, not in this class, they're not, because you know,
Correct.
like, I need you to be at your best. I need you to do what you need to do, and that's that, right? Like,
Yep.
and I enforced one deadline, and it was, I need everything done for this class by this date at this time.
Correct. Same. I think that's so much better for the students. And I would get feedback from my students at the college level too, when I would say, look, my syllabus has suggested deadlines. And they would say, what do you mean suggested? I was like, if you turn it in by this time, I put those deadlines in so I can give you really thorough feedback and I know when I would be able to get the work back to you. But if you can't get it in at that time, communicate with me beforehand and then I'll make arrangements. I'll support you. I want you to do well. So if you need, and I am also not a mind reader. I don't know what's going on in the other classes that you're taking or your life. And if that date just doesn't work for you, pick a different date. And you're right, the shock of like, what? I won't get a lower grade. No, you could still, crush it. You can still get an A because I'm interested in the work that you're doing. But same, I had the firm deadline of, well, I do have to turn in grades for this class by this date,
Right.
so everything needs to be turned in by this point. But I had students telling me they did better work for my class because they felt motivated to want to do the best that they could.
And
Um,
after my first semester, I'm
yeah,
sure that you remember your first semester as a learning experience, and very typically things, at least the way I remember college, was that things end heavy, right? So I had a student look at me and say, "Hey, can you extend the deadline on this? It's just all of my classes have everything due at the end." And so what
yeah,
I ended up doing after that, and I think that this is not about me, this podcast, but I think there's a lesson in here somewhere, is that I ended up changing my syllabus so that the heavy work was due in the middle, right?
smart.
And so that these students would come in and say, okay, this is I got to get this done, but then I'm kind of done with the big stuff for this class. Let me
Right.
focus on, and when I think back to the way I do things in my school now, there's a similarity, and it's because I don't really I don't rely on heavy tests and quizzes, and my work is very project based. It's very work with a partner, come up with answers with this, work in a group,
Yeah,
and in my class, a point is a point.
yeah,
It's not 10% of your grade for quizzes. No, a point is a point, right?
yeah,
And I think that's a lesson too, is that yes, your school may have some rigid grading policies, right? And you may have to follow those, but if you don't,
Yeah.
there's a way to kind of make things more bearable. There's a way to, almost like you said, let the students play, right?
Yeah.
Let them explore. So
Yeah.
interestingly, that gets me to a question that kind of fits this. What does meaningful rigor actually look like in a high school classroom today?
I think traditionally, when people think of rigor, they think of really hard and impressive. And the way I like to think of rigor is focused on important life skills that can be developed at school that are also hard and impressive, but in a slightly different way. And so, for example, if I were to say, do you want something in your life? Yeah, I want something. Well, what are you going to do to get it? I'm probably going to work hard for it. Yeah. So we're going to teach you some skills, work ethic, and what it means to work hard and break that down so that you can achieve your very best. Or I want to create, I want to create something. Okay, so how do you create something? I need to do research. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do research and how to differentiate between what's real and what's fake and look at a variety of different points of view. Or I want to have great relationships. Okay, we're going to teach you how to really work towards building great relationships with other people. And what does it mean to listen? And what does it mean to compromise? And what does it mean to have hard conversations and persevere and thrive in that relationship after that? So
Can I
I
just
want,
interject here? Because it almost
yeah,
sounds like rigor in a way, and this is a wild claim, and just shoot me down if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds
okay,
like rigor, the new definition of rigor is differentiation and, sort of getting what's right for that student. But it brings me back to our conversation about my boring European history class, right?
yeah,
It's not a matter of you having to learn about Napoleon. It's a matter of you having to do something that you don't necessarily want to do and
right,
persevering through that challenge, right? So I love
yes,
how this is all kind of coming together. And
it
please
is.
continue, but
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think students need to do the hard things. I think they need to not be rescued all the time and try hard things and realize that they can do it. And to not view education as this highly competitive thing, which unfortunately happens, and competing against peers or other people, but to compete against themselves. Like, I want you as an individual to keep leveling up for yourself. Like, if you learn more, if you do more, if you create more, how is that going to improve your life and your existence, and how might that impact other people? So my whole goal in education in general is I want people to be less of a consumer of I'm just going to sit back and let all these things happen to me, and I'll just sit through class and I'll sit through lectures because I don't really have to be engaged, or I'll just like let life happen to me. And I want students to be more of a contributor. I want them to think, what can I add? What can I do? How can I make my life better, my family's life better, the world better, and just be a really good human being. So for me, rigor, when you think of rigor, you think of hard work. And learning to become an exceptional human being, I think, is hard work. And defining what that looks like for the student, you're right, through differentiation, as well as having, high standards. And for me, the high standards are I know every single student and every teacher and staff member at my school has incredible potential, unlimited potential. And as individuals, we all like to put a roof over our potential. I'm not good enough for this, or I can't do this, or I blah, blah, blah. But if you have people at a school who say, actually, your potential is unlimited, and I want to help you achieve whatever you want to achieve, we're going to go for it. If you want to be a better person, this is a place to practice and make mistakes, and we can get better and better. You want to create something, let's do it. So if you unlock people's potentials and you encourage them to do the very best, that also is rigorous work. You have to work hard to keep going above your own lid that you create for yourself.
I'm gonna go a little bit off what I sent you,
Okay.
and there's a reason why. So, the next question I wanted to ask you was, how do teachers build genuine relationships with students while still holding clear expectations and accountability? And I think we kind of crossed that bridge, but there is a thought that entered my mind. Being that you're working with high school students who, I'm assuming a decent amount of them turn 18 before they graduate,
Yeah.
and you have a teacher in a building who's 22.
Yep.
How do you, or what's your best advice to teachers who are coming into their first year of teaching, where students are not so different in age to them? What would
Yep.
be your best advice to them to be successful as a teacher?
You are not their friend. You are their mentor. And you have to hold that line. And I think it's okay to be really clear with the students. When students try to chum up. Hey, bro, even with me. What's up, bro? I'm not your bro. I care about you and I will push you, but I'm not your bro. And it's not meant to upset them or hurt their feelings or any of that. But the goal of a teacher should not try to be liked by everybody. That should be nobody's goal. The goal is to try to inspire and motivate each kid to reach their full potential. And so you're basically trying to train, no matter how old they are, be Yoda. Your job is to be Yoda and help those young Skywalkers. You know, I don't want you to try to, befriend and hang out. And students will try to cross that line, but you have to hold that line.
And it's
I think that's
interesting
really,
because as a new teacher, you don't know any different, and sometimes it's hard to hold that line, because really you look at yourself and you're saying, well, like, things are exploding here. So if the kids like me, then they're gonna behave. If the kids think I'm cool, then
right.
then this and that. And so I think it's really sound advice, and I think it's something, worth thinking about for
Yeah.
younger teachers, because it's hard. And you're right. They're gonna test you. I tell teachers all the time that come into our building, like, our fifth grade team is very experienced, because, well, not because, but we notice that those kids are able to sense new teachers, like
Yep.
like what are they, like sharks sense blood, or like
Yep.
they're able to just kind of, like, I know they're new, so I'm gonna try this.
Right.
And so it's helpful to teachers to hear that, as you said before, be prepared, be wholly prepared. Just know that while some students are trying to be extra nice to you,
Yep.
others are pulling that on you, and
Sure are.
they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I mean, students are curious. They want to get dirt. They want to be able to tell stories. And I think the other thing I would recommend is that teachers remember that it's not about you. It's about the students. You're 1% of the classroom, and 99% are the students. So if students are trying to fish and get information about your personal life or blah, 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 flip it back on them. Get to know them. Find out about what they like. If they try to get inappropriate and say, oh, are you dating anybody or any of that? That's not appropriate conversation.
Right,
Shut it down. You don't ask your teacher that.
right.
But we can talk about other things. So I do think teachers need to practice, regardless of their age, be Yoda. Be the one to be the guide on the side, the mentor, the person who will inspire them to reach their full potential. You are not there to be liked. You're not there to be their friend or their pal. If they want to hang out between periods, I also have a strict rule with my teachers, my high school teachers. So many students want to hang out with my teachers. And I said, nope, this is my teacher's time between periods. They need time to set up, they need a time to breathe. If you need to make an appointment with them, you use our appointment time, but you're not going to be bothering the teachers. And at first, the teachers were kind of sad. They're like, oh no, we don't get to hang out with the students. But now they're thanking me. They're like, "Oh, I finally have time back. I hardly have any time between periods. I need to reset. I need to get things ready." And the students have learned to really respect that. So I think you have to guide and support. I mean, any new teacher, it's important for mentors at the school and for leadership to step in and support those teachers for anything that's going on so they feel like they're really prepared and they know what to do in hard situations.
And I think it's okay to also to watch, to look around to see how. So, for instance, a teacher sees someone come up to you in the hallway, be like, "What's up, bruh?" And you just be like, "No, no, we're not doing that. Good morning,
Yeah.
nice to see you, but
Yeah.
my name is Dr.
Right.
Cameron. It's not bruh."
Correct. Correct.
No, and I think that that's good, and I think that there's I mean, of course, there'll be some times where a kid will mistakenly call me bruh in class, and then I'll be like, "Yeah, bruh," but I say it in a tone that you
Right.
know we don't come back to that. And the advice that you're giving is so important because you're dealing with, as I phrased it early and intentionally, young adults.
Yep.
Young adults, because we talked about the age gap there, but
Right.
society is telling them that they are 4, 3, 2 years away from becoming an adult, and they do try to push it. And
Yeah.
I'll say this: in the time of social media, privacy is not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I had kids pulling up, like literally, like looking. I don't have I don't even know what my Instagram thing is, so like I couldn't even tell you. But like there are kids who like were literally pulling up like wedding websites for teachers and this and that just by a simple search of the name. And so I guess that makes it tough. But I do wanna get something positive in here for new teachers, and it's that it's not always hard to be young, because when you're young, you're more in tune with what the kids are doing, and you can really turn that into an engaging way to learn, right? So, hey, let's make this the first day. Give me the Instagram story of your life. Give me the 30-second, something like that. Whereas, other teachers who grew up in this time, hard time kind of doing that. So, there's definitely some. I don't want it to be all like, watch out for this. I want people to understand that you're also going to come in with a set of skills that are going to be invaluable to you.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go into the question that I am absolutely most interested in.
Okay.
And I don't know why, because I had a student come to me once when I was teaching as an adjunct, and that student looked at me and said, how would you handle this situation? And it was a student who was teaching in a high school, and he said, as I was standing in between classes, I watched two students just, let's say, engage in a conflict in the middle of the hallway. And so I guess where I want to go with this is that we've already mentioned that high school students are dealing with things that go well beyond academics, right? The family pressure, the mental health, the identity. What do you want teachers
Yeah.
to understand about supporting students through those moments, and what do those moments tell you as an educator?
Life is hard.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Yeah. Um, I think I mean, we already talked about the importance of offering grace.
Right.
I think that still applies regardless of what you're going through, but we are incredibly resilient as humans. Um, and I think people need to be provided tools of how to move through the hard things. So I think school shouldn't just be these siloed boxes of you learned this subject and this subject and this subject. It should also be an opportunity. It's a social place. You're not just learning one on one, you're learning with all these students. And so there should be an opportunity for there to be built in social and emotional curriculum where it's not only the teachers and the staff who are learning to help students grapple with hard things, but it's the students themselves who are given tools of how to identify when they're starting to get upset or they're wanting to rage against another student, and what steps they can take to be more in control of themselves and but still use their voice and express when they're upset and find other ways around growing and becoming a better human themselves. And so I think those tools are really important. And I also think that when kids are going through all kinds of really hard things, this is another tip. This is not just for new teachers and staff, but we are not trained therapists, most of us, right? We are not crisis counselors. And I think our job is to support our students and also give them the right resources and say, hey, looks like there's something really tough going on, or you've opened up to me about something that's really hard, and I want to guide you to this person who can really help you. Or if they drop some words or some thoughts that you're a mandated reporter that you need to then talk to people about, you have to let them know, hey, you shared something really big with me, and I appreciate that, and I care about you. I cannot carry this by myself, and it's not fair for you to. We need to report this to the appropriate authorities to support you through this too. I think when students are in crisis, they shouldn't feel like it's only one person or that they're alone in it. I think they need to know there's a whole team of people. I even dealt with this today, actually. I needed to call the police and do a whole child welfare services, do a report to support a student because I need to. That's my job. I have to make sure they're safe.
And what's hard about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what's hard about that is that when you're dealing with someone who doesn't have a fully developed a brain, a lot of the times they don't understand that you're doing that for them. They
Right.
see it as more of a slight, of a you betrayed me, you this, you that, and you just hope that one day they understand that you did
Yeah.
what you did and you had to do it, and you don't feel bad about it, but you know
Right. And I think that's all in the communication. And I express that very clearly. When I usually call parents first and I talk to the parents about it and I let them know, look, this is the situation. I'm calling you to let you know about it. I really care about this student and I care about you. And here's the protocol that I have to follow. I just wanted you to know and give you a heads up and have a chance to talk about things at home. And um, and I tend to get pretty positive responses of thank you for caring for my kid. For them, even though they're a young adult and they're growing into these young scholars, and they're always human beings regardless of what age. Like you said earlier in this podcast, it doesn't really matter what grade level you teach or you work for. They're all human beings on the path, and they all deserve respect and they all deserve extra care and extra love all the way through.
in a
So
strange way they're all going through the same thing, and it's just
in different ways,
right,
correct?
in different levels of complexity. It's
Correct.
it's really it's a very interesting profession when you think of it that way,
Yeah.
and for you and I, we've seen it. I've seen it K through 5, but I've also
Yep.
seen it in college,
College.
and
Correct.
it really it boils down to being the type of person who you are, being genuine, and
Yep.
being somebody who cares about others. All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. Um, and this is not on the thing too, so I
Great.
apologize. I do this.
I love it when it's just freehand.
Um, a lot of a lot of issues, a lot of things that come up in our conversation today deal with mental health, and I'm curious to know what it is that you advise teachers on, and what it is that you tell teachers and coach teachers through how to kind of care for themselves with when it comes to mental health. So I'd love if you feel comfortable, because again, I know for me, you just said it 5 minutes ago. I'm not a therapist. I don't know that you are.
Yeah.
But what do you, how do you help teachers deal with their own mental health, and what are some things that people could take away from this conversation about
Yeah.
dealing with mental health?
So you can't pour from an empty cup. And I know so many teachers and leaders give everything of themselves to everybody else and forget to take care of themselves. They run themselves ragged because they care so much. And there's something beautiful about that, and there's something dangerous about that. And that's often what leads to burnout. That leads to when teachers are not in a good place or they're really stressed, they're not going to handle their day really well. So there are things that teachers can learn, there are tools that they can learn to help them. There are social and emotional learning tools that are really useful. So I helped design a 3-part course at UCLA. It was a social and emotional learning course for educators. And it ended up turning even into a general education class. So I had people from all around the university who ended up taking the course because they didn't realize how much they needed to think about developing their awareness of themselves, of who are they, what are their strengths, what are their areas of growth, how are they really feeling, how do they express those feelings, how do they push people away, how do they pull people close to them. They just hadn't had a structured way of thinking through those things, and then working on how do you build really great relationships, and how do you have hard conversations. Do you just avoid them? Do you have them? Are you, going through different role play scenarios and play again of experiencing what it's like in so many different situations helps you develop these skills to take care of yourself. And then the more you take care of yourself, the better you are taking care of other people. So I think I will frequently check in with my teachers and see how they're doing. I'll ask them, how are you? How are you really? Like, what's going on with you? When, actually, this is a great little segue here, but for instance, for Teacher Appreciation Week, right? Isn't that coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So rather than just giving gift cards or whatever, I ask my teachers what they need. And sometimes my teachers need a day off. They just need they're like, I just need a sub to come in tomorrow. Great. I'll arrange that for you. Like, take care of yourself. Or they want me to come in and do a lesson while they get to just relax a little bit, or they want me to come talk to some students. Or I think the more we ask teachers what they really need, what kind of support they need, and then when they tell us, we should listen and then have them engage in sharing with problem solving ideas of how to help them. What kind of professional development do teachers really want to help them grow? So it's hard. We're not therapists again. So I might say, hey, we have these great resources through our HR where you can get free therapy if you want to. It's a great idea. Or we can check out these different health programs. I mean, there's so many things out there that could be beneficial. But it's got to really be something that the teacher wants.
One of the things that I think about when you're talking about this is that an interview is a two-way street, right? not only are you interviewing a teacher, but as a teacher or as a professional, I'm listening to what you have to say, and I'm gauging a lot of different things by what I'm seeing in the school and what I'm observing. And I would caution people, especially teachers that are newer, that think about when you're speaking to someone, you know, are they going to help you? Are they going to push you to take care of you? Um, Here on the East Coast, when I first started teaching about 11 years ago, it was pretty hard to step into a role. Like, that's changing where people are being given more of a choice as to where they want to go. And I think that, one of the things that you can do for yourself is to just is pick the situation that you think is going to be the most mutually beneficial. You know,
Yeah.
I took an interview. God, I don't remember when this was, but I remember asking the person, you know, what specifically are you looking for in terms of teaching? And the teacher told me, well, or the person, the administrator told me, well, we typically try to keep our teachers at 2 to 3 preps. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? She says, well, we try not to make them teach any more than 3 different classes. And I'm saying to myself, so if I'm teaching 6 classes in a day and I have to do 3 different preps for 3 different classes, this job already sounds exhausting. And look, there are some things that, maybe an experienced teacher might be able to do something like that, where it's like, hey, I already have something for this class, I have something for that class, so let me help out, Dr. Cameron. But there are red flags during interviews, and I think that mental health needs to be something that we as educators advocate for and for
Yes.
ourselves. Um,
I, I agree.
Listen, this has been an eye-opening hour. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Um, you've brought so many interesting things to the forefront. Least of which is that education is education, and you know you're dealing with so to those students who, well, I student taught in 7th grade and they want me to step into 11th grade. They're taller, I mean, that's it. The subject matter is a little different, but that's it. So I'm gonna ask for just kind of like one sign off thing from you, and to the teachers who listen to this podcast, what's the one thing that you hope they take back into their classrooms tomorrow?
Uh,
Just one.
uh,
Just one. All right.
it's hard. It's
Not the
hard.
5,000 things we talked about.
I know. I would say be the light.
Be the light.
Be the light. I go into the room with love, grace, compassion, curiosity, and offer love. Like, have every kid feel like they're seen and heard and valued and loved by you, especially the ones that drive you cuckoo. Be the light. Be the light.
Thank you so much. As I hear you talk, I can't stop thinking about just what a pleasure it is to teach. And one of the things that came to mind just as you were saying that was, and you said this earlier too, was that the entirety of school centers around the student experience. And they have one 11th grade experience, they have one 7th grade experience, you have it for 30 different times. So
Yeah.
be exactly what you just said. Dr. Cameron, thank you so much for your time. um,
Thank you so
I
much.
really
I
had a
feel honored.
great conversation. I hope to be
Yeah,
able to repay any favor you ever need from me for doing this. And
I appreciate that a
if I ever
lot.
move out to California, somewhere on the
Come
Central Coast,
visit.
I'm coming to look
Yeah.
for you for a job. All right. So
Yeah, I'll take you
um,
out for coffee.
thank you. Thanks for your time, and appreciate everything. Have a great day.
You too. I appreciate it.